There are numerous signs of tropical development as the Atlantic continues to rapidly heat up. What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. What we got for you guys right here is we have a few tropical waves that are currently moving across the main development region. Some of them are actually off the coast of South America. As a matter of fact, we're going to be looking at those. We're going to be looking at more models and some more conditions, as we do have some new updates that I do want to go over with you guys. So we have quite a few things that we're going to be going over today in numerous areas of the Atlantic, as well as a few other things too. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right here. Starting off, as always, we are going to the National Hurricane Center. We have a couple of areas of interest in the Eastern Pacific that I do want to go over and I do want to talk about with you guys. So we're going to go ahead and get on and discuss this very quickly. We have two areas of interest. We have one area that has a 50-50 shot, that is Invest 94E, and we have another area of interest that's in more of a long-term threat in the Eastern Pacific. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and read those out for you guys. Disorganized showers and thunderstorms continue in association with an area of low pressure located several hundred miles south-southwest of the southern tip of the Baja California Peninsula. A tropical depression could still form today while environmental conditions remain marginally conducive. The system is moving west to west-northwest at 15 to 20 miles per hour, and by Thursday it is forecast to move into cooler waters, ending its chances for further development. It's got a 50-50 chance of development in the next 48 hours and 7 days. It's literally a coin flip right here. Literally take out a coin, flip it. If it lands on heads, it develops. If it lands on tails, it doesn't develop. That's pretty much your odds that you have right here. Kind of like a game of blackjack, except it's with 2 cards instead of 13 others. So that's what we're looking at with our first area. Let's look at our second area very quickly. A low-pressure system is likely to form this weekend or early next week over the central portion of the East Pacific Basin. Environmental conditions are forecast to be conducive for gradual development, and a tropical depression could form by the early to middle part of next week as the system moves westward to west-northwestward at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Formation chance is 60% in the next 7 days. Those odds have steadily continued to increase as time has continued to progress. So that's the situation that we're watching, and those are the two areas that we're paying attention to. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and shift over to the Atlantic. So here is our satellite imagery. We're going to go ahead and actually zoom in into the main development region, actually, because what I want to discuss with you guys, we're noticing some more tropical activity. We're noticing some more tropical waves starting to form. You're noticing some more activity along the Intertropical Convergence Zone, also known as the ITCZ, forming as well. Taking a quick gander at that right here, you have a lot of convection starting to fire off the coast of Ghana, Sumarine, and French Guinea over here, nearing Venezuela as well, and Trinidad and Tobago. If you're tuning in from Trinidad and Tobago, you're going to want to watch out for the next couple of days. That's definitely going to increase your flash flooding threat for you over there. But ultimately, you're definitely seeing a lot more of these waves starting to get their act together, not necessarily in terms of development, but in terms of the fact that they're producing convection more so on their own than what we've seen previous. We also have the Intertropical Convergence Zone starting to kind of see some more convection going on just south of the 5-degree north line over here. I want to see if we can get an even closer view of that and take a quick gander at that. I don't think we can necessarily. Well, we can do the Atlantic wide one and just zoom in on it, but it wouldn't necessarily be too practical. But yeah, you're definitely noticing more convection along the ITCZ forming right here. I know this is a little bit of a janky setup. I do apologize for you guys. I just wanted to go ahead and show you this. Yeah, more activity starting to develop slowly but surely in parts of the Intertropical Convergence Zone. Matter of fact, I'm taking a quick gander at this right here. Let's go ahead and shift over to the Eastern Atlantic for you guys, because I was noticing something going on over here. Definitely noticing a little bit of rotation, a little bit of spin going on along this area. Actually, I'm noticing that, seeing a little bit of spin, seeing a little bit of rotation going on with that tropical wave. It doesn't have that much convection, mainly because of the dry air aspect of it. Also, when tropical waves emerge off the coast of Africa, they look all big and scary, all big and very frightening. I would say you see a bunch of convection. As Logan would say, it's eye candy. However, once it comes off the African coastline into the Atlantic Ocean, that convection really starts to taper off, and the reason for that is because it's changing its source of convection. Instead of maybe using baroclinic forcing, instead of using the air parcels to really produce convection as it moves further up from land, instead it has to use water now. So it's basically has to transition from land-based convection to water-based convection, and that transition takes a bit of time. We've seen this across many hurricane seasons. I've covered the last 5 seasons here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel, and that's been a situation that I've noticed almost every single time. There are obviously exceptions to the rule. I have seen many of those exceptions move off and then just start developing right away. Aaron was a very famous example of that for 2025. There's also a few other examples like Hurricane Larry, Hurricane Sam back in 2021. But I'm kind of rambling on a little bit too much. So let's go ahead and shift back over to the Central Atlantic, because I do want to pull up another view as to what we're seeing over there. Let's take a quick gander at this. I want to pull up the water vapor imagery and go, okay, is the dry air aspect of things going for this? And across the Atlantic, across this part of the Atlantic, you have a huge hole of dry air over here across much of the region, across much of the western MDR and the central MDR as well. You do have convection moving through here. That is starting to mix out a little bit of it, but the dry air still persists. You have more convection moving through here and developing, kind of mixing out some of the dry air, but it still persists. And what's the reason it's so important is the ITCZ and the tropical waves that come off the coast of Africa now. What they typically tend to do is slowly but surely, as we move through the last few days of June and as we move into much of July, what it typically tends to do is it tends to moisten up the atmosphere, start to clean out some of that Sahara dust that's in the region, and potentially start to get things more moist and more favorable for more tropical waves coming off in the future. So that's what we're paying attention to. That's why you don't see these massive hurricanes forming in June and July typically. Obviously, there are exceptions. Hurricane Dawn in 2023 formed in the subtropics. Hurricane Beryl, which barreled through the Caribbean, was a huge exception to the rule back in 2024. June 2024. We're actually approaching the 2-year anniversary of our coverage on it, so that's definitely been a long way going since then. But by and large, you have a bit of dry air that you're dealing with. Slowly but surely, that's going to get mixed out. Slowly but surely, we're going to get better and better conditions. But that's what we're dealing with in terms of satellite. Just want to give a heads up as to what I'm seeing right here, and that, hey, this is a sign of maybe some things that are going to be happening down the line. Maybe not right away, maybe not in the next week or so, but maybe in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks or so. Hey, you're going to want to pay attention to this. We're going to want to take a quick gander and kind of extract what is going on. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and shift over to conditions because we do have some updates with those as well. So here is our water temperatures for you guys right here. First of all, water temperatures are continuing to surge across much of the Atlantic. And what you're noticing off the coast of Florida, the Bahamas, and Cuba, really warm water is starting to show up in a lot of areas right here, eclipsing 30 degrees Celsius in a lot of these regions that are just off the Florida coast and off the Bahamas coast. 31 degrees off the Everglades and off the Big Island over here in the Bahamas. I'm not sure if that's where Nassau is or not. Let me know in a comment down below. Also down in Cuba, seeing those 31 slowly starting to pop up over there as well. You're going to see more and more and more of these as we go through July and as we go through August as well. Things are really starting to heat up, and also things are starting to heat up in this part of the Atlantic Basin. Our first sign of 29 degrees Celsius water temperatures has been shown right here, around 26 degrees north. That's a lot further to the south than what we saw previously. We are seeing these water temperatures starting to move slowly further up to the north into the subtropical Atlantic, but it's still staying somewhat concentrated in the northern tropical Atlantic. And what that's doing is it's causing more of a temperature gradient and ultimately more instability potential for the hurricane season. I've said this like a broken record. There were very warm waters in the subtropics last year, which contributed to major stability issues, which is one of the biggest reasons why we did not see an active hurricane season for 2025. However, for 2026, those stability issues, despite the El Nino, have definitely dropped off quite a bit, I would say, and that is in part due to an extremely cold winter that a lot of the eastern half of the United States ended up dealing with, and those big troughs that were bringing those polar plunges to the eastern U.S. ended up carrying into the subtropical Atlantic and really dropping those temperatures down even more. So that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're paying attention to by and large. But that's our water temperatures, and I do have breaking news for you guys, as for the first time this year, not the first time, but the first time of the official hurricane season, the 2026 water temperatures have officially eclipsed the 2025 water temperatures. I've been talking about this the last couple of weeks, saying, hey, if this continues, 2026 is going to eclipse 2025 despite the water temperatures being more concentrated. And ladies and gentlemen, today is our first indicator where we can see that June 23rd. We are looking at our line right here, now eclipsing 2025. It's not a big difference, don't get me wrong, but if we continue to see the water temperature surge the way we have, then it's going to be a big indicator of what kind of season that we might be happening, especially with how concentrated and how warm the waters are in the tropics. This isn't a situation where the entire Atlantic is seeing crazy water temperatures. We're seeing a situation where instead the tropical Atlantic is really heating up and really carrying the water temperature surge that we're noticing. It's mainly concentrated in the three areas that's heating up the most: concentrated in the Gulf region, concentrated in the Caribbean, and concentrated in the northern Atlantic basin. Those three areas are contributing the most right there. And we can go to show you the SST anomaly maps, really starting to see those fill in. The MDR is starting to recover a lot more than it was previously in the season, especially as you're seeing those cooler anomalies get pushed out and further out of the not the tropics, but rather the main development region. You do have a few isolated spots, but those warmer than an average anomalies right here, they're mainly concentrated in the MDR. You're going to want to pay attention to that, especially going into July and especially going into August, folks. And then as time progresses, the real warming, though, and the anomalies is mainly in the Atlantic basin. Subtropics are still definitely seeing those anomalies too, don't get me wrong, but they're not extreme anomalies like we saw last year or in 2023, as a matter of fact. The cold anomalies are still persisting outside of the Gulf Stream, and that's also part of the reason why we're seeing a lot of these water temperatures mainly being concentrated in the tropical Atlantic. So that's something that you're going to want to pay attention to and take pretty seriously. But ultimately, that is our big piece of news. We have officially eclipsed the 2025 water temperatures at this time. Will this trajectory continue? It appears more likely than it doesn't, although a lot is subject to change. But to kind of give you an indicator of that, let's go ahead and pull up our U-wind components over here. Here is our U-wind. Let's take a quick gander at this. As you can see, very below average U-wind component in the Caribbean and the Atlantic Basin and the Eastern MDR. Those are the three areas that are going to be heating up over the next 5 days or so as time progresses, but you do start seeing more of a mixed bag. You're starting to see an increase of U-wind, an increase of upwelling potential across parts of the Western MDR and in this region of the Atlantic Basin. Those below average anomalies start retreating into the subtropics. I am curious to see how that will progress down the line, but ultimately you are seeing a more red than purple starting around July 8th or so. But ultimately, you're going to want to watch out if you're in the Caribbean, in the main development region, Cabo Verde Islands. Those anomalies move over you. Definitely could see some water temperature warming for you guys over there. But those in the average, in the anomalies region here, the above average, maybe a bit of a slowdown in the water temperature in the surge just a little bit. We'll have to see how that progresses, but it's definitely going to impact your shear potential in that region for sure. So that's what we're paying attention to. Definitely still going to see a very warming situation across much of the Atlantic, but maybe slow down, maybe not as fast as it was progressing over the last 2 weeks or so. We'll have to see how things go. It's July. That's when you see the most warming especially in the last couple of weeks of July. So we're going to have to pay attention to that moving forward. Using that, we can kind of give an indicator of what our bulk shear is going to be like as well. So here's the situation that we're taking a quick gander at. Bulk shear, definitely an interesting situation. You do have a shear pocket in the eastern MDR, and you do have a shear pocket over here in this part of the MDR, but that is mainly surrounded by dry air. In order for development to take place, you're going to have to mix out a lot of that dry air aspect of it as well. But ultimately, by the time we get to June 26th, that shear aspect, that pocket is at its peak. It was previously June 25th. It has been delayed by about a day or so. So the 26th, you start seeing that peaking around in the afternoon, and then the 27th, things start to wind down a little bit, and you start seeing more shear filling into these regions right here. And by the time we get to the 28th, the shear really repopulates and slams shut any tropical development in that region for the time being. But as we get to the 29th and the 30th, you're starting to see a more of a zonal pattern with this glaring exception over here right over the Cabo Verde Islands. As that ridge starts to build up over here, you're seeing a high pressure system building up over in this part of the Sahel region in Africa that's driving a lot of that wind shear further up to the north. You're going to want to watch out for that, mainly because of just what it might end up doing with the Sahara dust. We've talked about that ad nauseum too, but mainly a zonal pattern with the exception of a few areas. But ultimately, by the 4th of July, that wind shear really starts to ramp up and move through the Canary Islands, Morocco, and other parts of North Africa. And that is going to be an interesting situation to see how this progresses. But even still, we're seeing a lot more lifting of this wind shear in the eastern 2/3 of the main development region over here. We're going to want to take that kind of seriously, and that still progresses a long way. You do still see shear lifting in this part of the MDR in the southwestern side of it, but I'm not necessarily sure how that's going to translate over to the Caribbean or the Lesser Antilles as well. So this is something we're going to want to pay attention to because of our Sahara dust levels. So let's go ahead and pull this up. Here is our dry air aspect for you guys right here. Mainly still very dry across much of the Atlantic, and especially in the main development region, with the exception of this big moisture pocket, mainly fueled by those tropical waves that I was talking about earlier, and the intertropical convergence zone starting to heat up a little bit more. But you do start seeing this happen. You don't see too much moisture. You don't also see as much dry air in this region as well. It's a bit more of a mixable dry air aspect of it, as I like to say it is, until about the 28th when that tropical development chance slams shut for a while. But then as we get to the 30th, look at this, ladies and gentlemen. You have our next round of Sahara dust and dry air coming off the coast of Africa. That wind shear over here across much of the eastern part of the Atlantic into North Africa actually blocks this off and actually kind of moves this into the subtropical Atlantic instead of the main development region. Yes, you're still going to see Sahara dust in parts of the main development region, but you're not going to see as much as what we would originally think over here. Am I saying that's going to be fully blocked off? Absolutely not. What I am saying, though, is a very big percentage of it is going to be moving over into the subtropics and potentially get pushed into Europe much earlier than we would originally anticipate. This is a kind of pattern you would start seeing around early August. This is late June when this starts to take place. And that is a very big indicator to me as to go, okay, this looks to me that at least one of the inhibiting factors over here is going to start becoming less inhibiting a lot earlier than maybe what we anticipated. Definitely something that we're going to want to watch out for. Yes, you do have a more dry air and more Sahara air moving into much of the MDR by July 8th, but my goodness, a lot of it is concentrated in the eastern part of the subtropics off the coast of the Iberian Peninsula. And that is something that we're going to want to watch out for, especially as we go down the line with the season, and as we continue to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. We are 80 subscribers away from 15,000. Hit that subscribe button if you can for me, please. Let's try to get there by the end of this month. I think it's very possible to do that at the rate we're going. Also, Weather Center Nazario is going to be on the Triple P show. I talked to David Schlotthauer. He has work, so he's not going to be able to come on. I have extended an invite to another potentially big YouTuber. I'm going to see if she would like to come on or not. I'm waiting for a response, but we're going to have a good night regardless on Friday night, so be sure you stay tuned for the Triple P show. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.